Hello, I'm Ignace Aleya from toleratedcinematics.com, and today I will be showing you how to create this. Alright, a pretty cool result, even if I say so myself. If you don't feel like following this tutorial or you want to support our channel, you can always buy this template with the link in our description. You can use that in After Effects without any third-party plugins, and then just change the title to whatever you need. It has 5 different kind of transitions: zoom in, a fly up, fly down, from left to right, and right to left. So I'm going over on how I've created that today in this tutorial. So the first thing that we need is a barber wire, and I actually used a barbered wire generator that I found online. I will put a link in the description, but they allow you to download this kind of rig right here. So click the link in the description and we can create one here in Cinema 4D. So you will need Cinema 4D to create that. If you don't have it, I'm sorry, and then you can buy our template. It doesn't require you to open up Cinema 4D, just After Effects. And if you do have Cinema 4D but don't feel like making this, we'll also put a link in the description to the final result of this barbered wire, so you can use that later on. So we have the wire here, when we have the espresso. If we click here on the thorns, we can actually modify everything in here. So we can open that up, and in the helix we can modify the form of our barbered wire. If you're going to animate it, you're going to see that it's actually animating on together with the stripes. So what we want to do is actually go to the end of our timeline, so everything is animated on for our purpose. So here in the helix, I will just animate it a bit. The start radius and end radius, I want them to be the exact same thing. So if we see this, okay, we'll have to regenerate each time, and make it longer, of course. So let's say height right here, and make this something like 4000. There we go. And now we have a pretty cool barbered wire, pretty long as well. So let's see if this is going to do for us. Maybe also change the radius to something like 100. I think it's a little bit too curvy. But yeah, you can do whatever you want with the form, of course. And yeah, once you have that, actually I'm not going into the settings right here. I think we can increase some of the thorns, but yeah, for me this is actually perfect. So what I will do is go to the end of my timeline when everything is animated on. If you see that everything is animated on, I'm going to right click here on this null, and I'm going to click on current state to object, and now we have we have this one here, the helix. You can see that it's become path, so I'm going to delete the first one. You can also uncheck it if you want to save it for later purposes, and I'm going to right click, select children, right click, connect plus delete right here, and if I click that, I just have one object. I can delete the espresso actually, and maybe delete even the selections. I don't need it. The UMV tag, I don't need it either. So I have one object, which is my barbered wire. And if you want that textured, you can download that with a link in the description. So I'm going to delete all the materials right here, and I'm going to create a new material for it. So I'm going to open that up and just rename it to something like iron. And then I'm going to apply it to my barbered wire right here. What I've done here is actually I went into the color, and in the texture I added a layer, and the layer allows me to stack up some multiple colors, and I changed the colors to be like more of a rusty kind of iron. You can go and just pick one color, like a light gray color. For new barbered wire, I wanted the old kind of aged barbered wire. So what I did is I added one color, and in the color I went and picked a nice dark but a kind of a little bit of orange brownish color. As you can see right here, made it fairly dark and maybe a little bit more saturated, something like this. Will do fine. Maybe make it a little bit brighter and less saturated. It actually depends, whatever you want actually. So I'm going back here by clicking on this arrow, and then I'm going to add another shader. Here I'm going to add a noise shader. We can actually change the blending mode of that noise shader to something like overlay, and then lower the opacity so we get some kind of variation in the color. We can also open up that noise if we click on the thumbnail, and we can increase this to something like 250. If we go back, we'll have some variations in here. So I'm going to add another shader, and I'm going to add another noise, and in the noise I'm going to open that up and change the noise type from noise to something like Luca, and here I will change it to a dark, very saturated orange, which will be kind of the wrist, as we say here. So let's go for a nice wristy color, and there we go. And then for the other color, we can turn this black, or just maybe invert these things, because I actually want them to be in reverse. So I'm going to make this one black and this one saturated orange. And there we go. Okay, and then I will increase my contrast just a touch, maybe lower my brightness, and now we get something like this. And you can stack up these things, add more noise, and change the blending mode, for example, to screen here. And now we have something like this in our colors. Go crazy with it. Maybe one more shader to finish off, and make this one like a FBM kind of noise. We'll make this 50 in scale, and go back and change this to an overlay again, and that way we really get some really nice variation. I'm also going to make my color a little bit darker, or whatever. We'll see how this does later on. Okay, so we have our color. We can see that it's kind of different than just a solid color, and it really adds some texture to your final result. And then we can go into the reflectance channel and remove the default specular, add another backman, add a new backman shader, and go into the layer Fresnel immediately. Here I'm going to change the Fresnel to a conductor, and the preset I'm going to use iron. Okay, so I'm going to make it a little bit larger so you can see everything, but we have this here. Then I will increase my radius roughness actually to something like 45, which means that it's just going to roughen my surface, so it's not as a shiny kind of chrome object. It's more like a aged iron kind of object. I'm going to lower my reflection and my specular like so, and then I will go into the roughness shader, and here I will add a texture, and I will add a noise texture. What that will do is everything that's white in my noise texture is going to add roughness, and the more it becomes black is going to decrease the value right here, so you're going to see some kind of spickles in there. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to change the scale to something like 50, and there we go. You can actually see it right here that it really does something to our material. So let's see how this does. I'm going to apply this to our barbered wire, and actually we already applied it. I'm going to make this projection. If I click on my material right here on my object, we'll make the projection cubic, which will just allow us that we don't need a UMV web. So I'm going to render this out, see what this gives us, and of course I think it's a little bit too shiny, but of course we don't have any light, so I'm going to leave it as it is right now. So what I've done then is actually I did it by hand, but you can easily go into the MoGraph shader and add a cloner object and put that wire in there. And I should have done that actually, but I forgot. I did it by hand, but also I wanted to position them the way I wanted to. So yeah, the cloner is a bit more random, I guess. So I'll apply a grid array here, and I'm going to make it, of course, a little bit bigger. And there we go, something like so. A little bit higher, and maybe also in the Y. Okay, so now we have something like this, and in 3D space, pretty cool. We can increase our X a little bit longer and increase the numbers here, something like 5, and this one to 4. And of course it's going to be a little bit slow, so I'm going to render instances right here. That's going to make it a little bit faster. And there we go. So I have all my barbered wires. Of course they look very similar, so what I will do is click on my cloner, go to MoGraph Effector, and add a randomizer right here. And I will increase this to something like 100, or maybe even more, 250. You can go crazy with this. You can also add some rotation, so check on the rotation and see what that does for our result here. Actually pretty cool. this one can be like this. Okay, so let's say we want our final text to be right here. And of course, I'm doing this with a cloner. If you would do this, I would recommend you to do it by hand, because you can see right here, we already have some mistakes. So we have to find a good position where there's no final position of our barbered wire. But for now, I will do it just like this. We're going to do a simple zoom right here. You can do two things, like in the project file, we used 2D text from After Effects with a 3D applied to it, but we can also add our text immediately right here. If you want to, you can apply a text, and you can, well, add something like barbered wire, and we can click enter, click and create a new camera, so we can actually zoom in, jump into that camera by clicking here on our little thing here, so it becomes white, and that means that you're in the camera. And now go to the coordinates of our camera while it's selected and zero out everything. So there we go, and now we can drag back into Z depth, and that's going to allow us to be in the center but still get an overview of what's in our scene. And of course, this doesn't look as a nice position, so I'm going to offset a little bit into the X right here, and maybe also in the Y, so you can see this dot is actually in the center of our text averagely. You can also reposition your text. It's completely up to you. I'm also going to jump into my render settings right here, and I will change this to for now I will just go for HD, which is actually not done anymore, but yeah, why not? So 1280 by 720, there we go. I'm going to drag it back into Z space a little bit more, and I will make this my timeline that it becomes like 10 seconds, which is 300 frames, and there we go. Actually, we can go for 5 seconds, so 150. And at the end, at around 100 or frame 90, which means 3 seconds, I'm going to click on the keyframe for the Z right here. So we have our final result, and I want my text to be in position like this. Then I will go back into, to my timeline, to the 0 frame, and I will just zoom out like this and click on create a new keyframe. Now we can click on our cloner, maybe rotate it with the rotation tool and rotate it like this. Really go whatever floats your boat. Yeah, as I said, you should do it by hand. It's going to be a little bit better, but you can reposition everything like this, and maybe offset it a little bit higher. And actually, I don't want this to overlap my text here, so I'm going to rotate it anyway. Also, what is really cool is when it comes close to the camera, that gives a really cool effect. I'm going to render it out, see what I have right now. And of course, we don't have any lights, so what you should do is add some lights. So I'm going to add one light. Okay, we can reposition our lights, and actually I've done some crazy lighting setup. For now, I will just add some lights, but just know in general that you have to play around with your lights to get a nice result in your scene, change the colors, change the intensity. I'm not going into that right now because there are many tutorials on this. What you can do to make it easier for yourself is just add a physical sky. That's also going to give some nice reflections to your barbered wire. If we render this out, let's see. Okay, so let's say this is what we want. I'm going to right click on my sky, Cinema 4D tags, and add a compositing tag, and here we can actually select scene by camera and check it off. That way we have a black background, and I'm actually going to delete my text because I want my text to be in After Effects. I'm just going to do it as in the preview, so I'm going to delete my my text and add a null object right here. We'll position it around right here. And this is actually going to be my vibrate tag. So as you can see in the preview, my camera is not very smooth. It's not like it's actually a dolly forward shot. It's a little bit of a like a handheld shot. And what I've done is actually I put my camera into my vibrate tag, and then I right clicked on my vibrate tag, Cinema 4D tags, and add a vibrate right here. I will check on enable position and rotation. For the rotation, I will do something like let's say 0.5 and copy this and all the other channels, and also for the time 0.5. And maybe this is a little bit too much, but we'll see in a second. And for the position, let's go for 100 and 0.3. Let's see what that is doing for us. So you can see that our camera is wiggling just a little bit right there. Okay, pretty cool. So that's what I've done, and to actually export the data to After Effects, it's a little bit more difficult than you can see right here. If you just export this to After Effects, it's not going to know the position of your vibrate tag, so we actually have to bake it, but there's no easy option to do that. So It's going to be hard if you're not familiar with Cinema 4D, but I'll try to explain it well enough. I'm going to add a new null object, and here I will rename this to data, and that's going to be the data of our vibrate tag. We're going to actually transform it to this location. What we'll need to do for the data is actually right click, go to Cinema 4D tags and add an Espresso element. That's going to open up this node-based system, and it can look a little bit daunting, but it's actually really simple. What we have to do is drag in our data and drag in our vibrate. And the vibrate, we're going to actually just copy the information of our data, of our vibrate into our data null. So I will click here on the red and I will add a global matrix element. And for the vibrate and the endpoint, I'm going to also take global well, actually it's the other way around. I'm sorry, guys. It's already hard enough, and then me making mistakes can make it even harder. So for the vibrate tag, we need an out point of the global matrix, which is just the position, and we're going to import it in the global matrix of our data. We actually don't need this one, so remove delete port. This port, come on, man. Okay, global matrix. Okay, so I'm going to just drag this one into this one, and that's connected, and that means that it's going to follow along. One more thing that we need to do though is drag in our data into our vibrate and go to the coordinates and make sure that everything is 0, so it's actually in the same position. And now if we drag this out, we should see that if it's in the same position, we can actually click on the null, go to object and change it dot to something like a diamond, and then go to the scale tool and make it a little bit bigger so you can actually see if it's in the same place. You can do the same for the vibrate and give it another, like a triangle. Well, okay, so it's, yeah, if you scale this, of course, it's going to also, yeah, change the position of our camera, but yeah, you get the idea. We're just seeing if the position stays in the same position as our vibrate tag. And if we go out of our camera, we can see right here are two nulls. This is the vibrate, this is the data, they're in the exact same position and they move with each other. So that's what we need. And okay, we'll click on our data. So this is the null that isn't, yeah, where we didn't apply the vibrate, but it's looking into the information of the vibrate. We're going to click on the data, go into the character right here, go to the manager and click on cappuccino. Here we're going to the beginning of our timeline, and we're going to check position, scale, and actually also rotation. The scale we can uncheck it, we don't need the scale, but for position and rotation, as we have in the vibrate tag, enabled position and rotation, so pretty straightforward, and everything else is okay. So we'll do start real time, and then what we need to do is click in our viewport like this. Just hold your left mouse button. That's going to animate it. Okay, let's stop the real time. And if we click now on our data, we're going to see that we have keyframes for the entire timeline. Maybe not at the end, but okay, whatever. We have our keyframes right here, and that's going to allow us to export this to After Effects to add our text to. Now, one more thing, if we're going to import a Cinema 4D project in After Effects, it's not going to notice the null objects, only it's going to look at the camera and the lights, but no null object. So what we need to do is right click to make sure that it does actually read it in After Effects, is go to the Cinema 4D tags and click on external compositing tag, and if you do that, it will now read everything in After Effects. Okay, we have our data, we have our barbed wire, we now need to export our scene just as a video, because I think we can actually import Cinema 4D scenes in After Effects, but I like to render them out up front in Cinema 4D so we can actually work a little bit faster in After Effects, because if you open up Cinema 4D project files in After Effects, it's going to slow down your system, and especially if you don't have like a 16-core PC, you don't want that. So just export the video first. So I'm going to the output, make it the resolution that you want. I'm going for just HD, frame rate of 30, and yeah, just click on all frames. And also the renderer, we're going to select the physical render engine, which is a little bit better than the standard one. Well, actually a lot better, but that being said, go into the save, and here also really important is to pick something like OpenEXR. TIFF is also pretty good, or PNG. OpenEXR just allows you to change a lot more colors. In this case, actually, it's not important because we don't have a lot of detail in our shot. The colors are not important, but if you're going like crazy 3D, OpenEXR is the go-to. Let's just pick PNG, as PNG allows us to add no background. For the depth, we can go for 16-bit. Let's just say 16-bit, and click on Alpha Channel right here. And Alpha Channel allows you to everything that's gray here, so where there is no background, it's not going to export that as well. If you do, your background will be black, and if you don't, you don't have a background, and you can add your background later on in After Effects. So give it a location to save it to. Preferably create a new folder and render, export, and well, whatever. Open it up and barbered wire scene. And then click save, and that will now export our scene towards that position, towards that location. We don't need any multipass, we don't need V-Ray bridge, actually no Arnold, no multipass. That's because we actually opened up that barbered wire scene and we continued working in that, so we're actually copying the scene settings of the creators, but we don't need that. Okay, so I'm going to close this down and then just hit render, and also save your Cinema 4D scene somewhere, so I'm going to save it. Wire tut, okay. So if you export this, I'm not going to export it, but then you go into After Effects, you go into your project manager, and you import two things. So the first thing that you need to import is your file, and I'm actually going to use my EXR from the actual template. So I'm going to click on my EXR, but you will have PNG or whatever you picked. I'm going to check here OpenEXR sequence, so make sure it's a sequence, and then just click import, and if we double click on this, we will see that we now have our animation. Of course, you can see I did have a background, so but you cannot obviously just add a background in After Effects. So just drag it into a new composition like so, and then create a new solid layer, click OK, and that will be your background. So now you can add gradients, you can add textures, whatever you want. This is just basically going over it. But okay, we have our barbered wire scene import, but we don't have the information of our camera if we want to add text. Let's say we want to add text, epic text, okay. We have it in our scene, we turn it 3D, we put it in a nice location. I want it to be here, but our animation, yeah, this doesn't affect our scene. So I'm going to import our Cinema 4D scene, and the new versions of After Effects allow you to work together with Cinema 4D. If you have like After Effects CS6, you will have to take other procedures. It's still possible, but I won't be covering that in this tutorial. But if you Google it, I'm sure you will find a solution for that. You can export Cinema 4D data into After Effects. But I will just open up the wire tut project file, import that. And there we go, we have it right here. I'm going to import it into my composition. And now we can see our actual scene from Cinema 4D. We're just going to extract the data. Once we have done that, we can actually delete it from our composition. So now we have the camera and the data right here. What I want to do is click on the camera, and with the parent tool, I'm going to combine it with the data, because currently we have our camera zooming in, and in Cinema 4D, it's a child of our data null, of our vibrate null, but here we don't have, like, we can't actually drag it in here, so we have to parent it again, connect it together, so it's also affecting our camera. For the text, I'm also going to make it a 3D layer, and then go into the position of our null, so press P on the keyboard, and then click on the position, and just go to the beginning of your timeline, go to edit, copy, go to your text, edit, paste, and if you're going to press P on the keyboard, you're going to have the exact same position for your text. Now, of course, if we are going to play it forward, we're going to see that it also does something to our text right here. So let's see. Of course, it's not affecting the same way as my background, as I didn't export my background, but you get the idea. If you have the actual background of your actual scene, but I just didn't want to render it out again for this tutorial, because it takes a little while, but that, you can see that it's actually connecting to that null object with the same position, so that's great. What you can do now is click on your text, go into the layer, pre-compose your text, and I'm going to name this a title. Click OK, open up that composition again, click again on the title, and here I'm going to pre-compose it once more, and that's because we want to apply some effects to it. So I'm going to layer pre-compose, and we are going to name it text. So we have a composition title with our composition text, where we can actually change our text if we want to change it later on. You can see it right here. Well, actually, where is our text? I don't see it. Yeah, it's actually 3D. We don't need it 3D here, so uncheck the 3D, press P on the keyboard, delete the position, right click and reset it so it's actually in the center of our scene. And there we go. In the title we should have the same thing, and in the background we want to turn it 3D again, and press P on the keyboard and copy the position data right here. Well, actually at the beginning of your timeline, paste it back, and now you'll have a correct scene file. I'm sorry, but okay, right here in the title we can now apply some effects to it. So I will change my text color to generate fill and pick a nice brown color like so. Then we can import some nice textures. So I have some textures right here, but you can do whatever you want. I will import one like this. Just search for like scratches or grunge on Google and you will find some textures. Import that into that composition of the title. And then we want to duplicate our text layer. So duplicate, Ctrl D on the keyboard and drag this on top of your image layer, and then toggle the switches so we see our track matte option. So with this button, and I'm going to select alpha matte. So now our image is going to look at the data from our text and it's only going to cover that area. So press S on the keyboard for your title texture. We can scale it down like so. Maybe also change the blending mode to something different. So click on darken and just with the arrow, holding shift and arrow down, or actually plus, shift and plus is going to allow you to scroll through all the settings. Maybe this one looks pretty cool. So this is color dodge, classic color dodge can also look pretty cool. And now you can stack up these things. So if you want to, you can duplicate the text once more, import another kind of like scratches right here. Also import that below our text and make a luma matte out of it, or actually an alpha matte, and then maybe go for multiply, and now you have your scratches right here. You can also go for a screen and go to effect, channel invert, and now you have something like this. You can do some really cool stuff with it, maybe even overlay, classic color dodge. You get the idea. Okay, so now you have your text. If we go back to our background, we're going to have our text made in After Effects, but following our 3D data. So yeah, that's actually how to create the whole scene. I hope you understood everything. It's quite a difficult scene, so I'm actually testing out this tutorial. I'm not sure if you want these kind of advanced tutorials, or if you want like more simplistic tutorials in After Effects, but still with a great result. So let me know in the comments below what you think. And yeah, definitely like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel for more if you aren't already. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.